Hello, this is MusicTechHelpGuy, and welcome to episode 14 of my Pro Tools 11 video tutorial series. In this episode, we're going to take a look at groups and using groups to edit multiple tracks at the same time, and also to adjust levels, solos, and mutes on multiple tracks at the same time. So let me just show you what I have right now. I have 4 drum tracks here. And let's say that I wanted to just play the 4 drum tracks together. I'd have to basically solo each one individually, just like so, or I'd have to use a key command like this, where I click on the top one, hold shift, click on the bottom one, hold shift, and while holding shift, hold option as well, and then click on either solo or mute, and that's going to let us control them all at the same time. Using groups is a quick way to do that without having to use the shift option command. It's also, groups are a little bit easier because instead of having to drag over all of your groups and then drag them where you want them to go, you can just drag left to right on one of the tracks, and all of the tracks in that group will be selected and edited. So that's the advantage of using groups. So my drums right now sound like this. I have sort of like a string idea over here that I also want to be grouped. I have some sort of like a string pad, and then also some stuttering strings, but I'm using them together as sort of like a layered instrument. So they sound like this. And then I've got a bass idea over here that doesn't need to be grouped because it's just one instrument. And then it continues on over here. So let's create a group first out of our drums. So the easiest way to create a group is just to select all of the tracks that you want in the group. You just click on the top track, hold shift, click on the bottom, and then press Command G or Control G in a PC. This brings up the Create Group dialog. What it does is when you select those 4 tracks, it automatically adds those 4 tracks to the group, and then we can create a new group and a new group name out of this group that we want to create. So I'm going to call this drums. Now, there's 3 main types of groups in Pro Tools: edit, mix, and edit and mix groups. Edit groups only affect editing functions like trimming, moving, copying, pasting, things like that. Mix groups affect things like solos, mutes, also levels like volume changes. And edit and mix groups affect both. And you'll also notice that if I create an edit group and hit OK, it only shows up in the groups dialog or the groups panel over here, just in the edit window. If I go to the mix window by pressing Command =, it does not show up in the mix window's groups window. Now, if you don't see the groups window here, the group panel, whatever you want to call it, you can hide and show it by clicking on the little arrow down here. And then you can do the same thing in the edit window as well. So let me delete this group. I'm going to right click on drums, and I'm going to choose delete. And let's recreate that group. Command G. And we're going to make it a mix and edit group. And I'll just call it drums. So now when I use my, my selector tool to drag on these tracks, it automatically selects all 4 tracks for me. Likewise, if I press solo, it solos all 4 of them. And if I hit mute, it also mutes all of them. One thing it does not do is it does not arm for recording all of them. You'll have to use the shift option function again and arm them all at the same time. Now, this is one of the downsides of not having the complete production toolkit for Pro Tools, or not having Pro Tools HD, because in Pro Tools HD you can actually add arm for recording as well as a whole bunch of other attributes to your groups that you can't use in your like your normal version of Pro Tools. So you have to have Pro Tools HD or the production toolkit for that to work. Also, if I go to the mixer, I can adjust the levels of all 4 of my drum tracks in relative volume to each other. And I can mute and I can solo from here as well. So that's kind of cool. Now to turn off your groups, turn off a group, you can just click on the name of the group and it will be deselected. So now with the drum group deselected, I can individually control faders, I can individually control my mutes and solos, and I can also individually edit tracks if I want to. Another quick way to turn on and off your groups is there is a function in here called suspend all groups. It's Shift Command G. So right now my drum group is on, but I can press Shift Command G and quickly disable all of my groups, and then press Shift Command G and turn them all back on. Another way to do this is using the group ID number here, or letter actually. This little A is an identification letter that allows me to quickly toggle on and off this particular group. The way you can do this is it's actually a key focus function. Just like we had the key focus mode over here, the groups panel actually has its own key focus mode. So if you turn that on, if I press the A button on my keyboard, it'll actually toggle that on and off. Just like the pressing Shift and 1 for the exclamation point will turn on my on and off my all group. Now, the all group is a group that's automatically there when you start your session. The all group basically just allows you to select everything, solo everything, and mute everything. It's just a group that you can't delete, but it's always there. But you can turn it off whenever you want. All right, so let's so we got a group for our drums. Let's create a group for our strings here too. So I'm going to just select these 2 tracks, hit Command G, and I'll call this strings. There we go. Now, one thing you may have noticed is these little dots on the left side of the groups. If you make a selection within a group, and all of the members of the group are currently selected. So for our drums here, I've selected the drum tracks up here. You're going to see a filled in circle. So the filled in circle just means that all members of the group are currently selected and no members from outside of the group are selected. If you see a hollow member or a hollow circle, that means that only some members of the group are selected. So if I just select 2 of the drum tracks, you'll see that drums is a hollow circle. Now, if you have a circle and a dot, it means that all members of the group are currently selected, but also some additional members of another group or outside of the group are selected. So it's just an indicator to tell you what things within the group are selected or are not selected. All right, so let's say that I want to add some additional tracks to my drum group. Maybe I added another percussion instrument, or maybe I want my bass instrument to be part of the group as well. What you can do is you can right-click on the drum group or whatever group you want to modify, choose Modify, and then you can find the track that you want to add to the group, and then just hit Add, and it adds it to the group. So now when I drag over one of my drum tracks, it's also going to select the bass track down here. That's not really what I want, so I'm going to go back to Modify, and I'm going to take the bass out of the group. All right, so let's use our groups now to just do some basic editing here. I'm just going to turn my key focus mode back on so I can zoom. Let's duplicate these, hit Command D, duplicate our drum beat 3 additional times. I'm going to duplicate my MIDI bass, and then I'm just going to grab the tail end of this sort of stutter string sound here, use my separation grabber tool, hold Option and drag this over, then duplicate that a few times. So I was able to, and then I'll just turn all my groups off because I don't want them on anymore. And let's see what this sounds like. So the drums, maybe I want the drums a little louder. Let me turn my groups back on, Shift Command G, go to the mixer, Command =, And let's just pull all the drums up, maybe pull the stutter strings down a bit. Let's see what this sounds like. And there you go. So using groups to edit and mix is very useful, especially if you're working with large track counts that are sort of being recognized as a single instrument or group of instruments that are working together. So this really is helpful for drums, especially I mean, this is a small set of drums I'm using here, but if you have like a kick, a snare, a clap, hi-hat, crash cymbal, toms, effects, I mean, you very easily could have 8 different channels of just drums, and you want to be able to move them around as a unit rather than having to move them around individually. So in a situation like that, that could be really, really helpful. So I hope you enjoyed the video, and thanks for watching.